All right, Shannon Gerald Ivy. At least you did respond with something. There was at least data based, evidence based, and not just a bunch of spurging about what a uneducated or obtuse or whatever person I am. So I'll give you that. I do appreciate you at least responding with an argument or some evidence or something, which is better than what the other people responding to my comment have done. So I appreciate that. It's still full of crap, but I'll get to that in a minute. But before I get to that, it's important that we review what the topic actually is. So what Javanka here said, she said, I'd like to ask my friends who support our current political leaders a genuine question. That would mean that it's a good faith question, that she's genuinely, honestly, transparently looking for an answer. See, if she was presenting this question and not looking for an actual answer or an actual exchange, then that would mean that the question was not genuine. Rather, it would have just been dramatic, or it would have been just what some women refer to sometimes as venting, or manipulative, or insightful, or divisive, and that sort of stuff. But if it's a good faith question that she's asking, then that would mean that she is asking a genuine question that's been weighing on me. How are you able to continue our friendship, meaning between her and her friends, which I haven't seen Javanka in going on 40 years now. We graduated high school together way back in 1989. To continue our friendship when we witness them, the leaders you support, publicly disrespecting, disparaging, and demeaning people of color. Just so that we understand one another's semantics here before we really get into this discussion, people of color is one of those created terms that really doesn't mean anything. And I explained that in my original comment. People of color is one of those terms that's created by people on the left, and then everyone that the people on the left want to include in people of color, they just shove off into that term, regardless of whether or not the people they're shoving into people of color want to be considered within that, segment of society or not. You see, so like I have friends that I'm very close with who are what you and Javanka would refer to as people of color, who would not really like being, just compelled to be considered a part of that group. You see, they don't think of themselves as people of color. They think of themselves as Americans or just people in general, One friend that Javanka would know, probably know because we all graduated high school together, is a friend of mine, of ours probably, named Miranda Martin. And Miranda is a full-blooded, 100% Navajo Indian. Now, when you hear me say that, Indian, that probably triggers you. And it might trigger Javanka. Indian, oh my God. Oh, no, those are Native Americans. All I know is that Miranda and her sister and her cousin and her mama, all of which I know, refer to themselves as Indians. Miranda's email address is LILNDN, Little Indian. Okay. The tag on her Jeep, her car tag, says the same thing, Little Indian. So I would presume that Miranda would not be very happy with you and Javanka wanting to lump her into quote unquote people of color. So, this whole idea demeaning people of color, as you can see with this right here, this is kind of red. This is kind of a cream color. Those are colors. Those are colors. So then, according to the purest interpretation of people of color, I belong to that group, true? I am a person of color. I'm not transparent. I have melanin in my skin. Now, it's at a much lower level than, say, Miranda or Javanka. But this is a color. But the left takes words like these little phrases, these little mantras and mottos and marketing, slogans, people of color, to sound very lofty and educated and inclusive and whatever towards different minorities that the left decides are subjugated and in dire need of their help, people of color. But the terms really don't mean anything because, again, this is a color. So I really hope that in the ensuing discussion you and I have, we can actually use words that mean things and not words that are poetic like people of color. Where you would have to say, well, you know what I mean, and then explain the poetry in real English. I hope that we can just jump on over to the real English. And because that's what intelligent, academic, informed, and educated people do. They don't play around with all of the poetry like people of color. Anyway, with that said, doesn't that create a conflict for you, she asked. How do you reconcile supporting politicians whose rhetoric I perceive as demeaning toward my community while maintaining a friendship with me? That means that her question is she's asking me how I and other friends that she has who support Trump and his administration, how we reconcile our support for those politicians whose rhetoric she perceives. She didn't say whose rhetoric actually does demean the community, her community, while maintaining a friendship with her. So her perception, she has set her perception as the arbiter of whether or not the friendship should remain and whether or not the Trump administration is actually being disrespectful and demeaning and all of those things that she said. So that's the question she asked. And then, of course, my response to her, and I don't have a screenshot of it, but I'll read it to you here. I asked her, do you seriously want a discussion, debate on it to try to come to some sort of understanding? Or is this question just to throw shade so people can dogpile on others? I think that's probably what it is. That's what Vicky Hogan, Will Livings, and so forth down here have tried to do to me. It's just that I don't care enough about them to be dogpiled on. I said, my vote, I didn't vote for Trump the first 2 times, but I did vote for him the 3rd time. My vote was very calculated and reasoned. I'm happy to discuss this, but I'm not interested in a bunch of liberals, leftists, progressives, and so forth, just trying to use shame, guilt, peer pressure, and so forth, which is what these other commenters besides you are trying to do. Just trying to use shame, guilt, peer pressure, and so forth to show out, though. For instance, you're talking about these politicians are publicly demeaning quote-unquote people of color. Where are they doing this? Also, I'm kind of ruddy and pink. Those are colors. So it would seem pretty separatist and racial for you to use the phrase people of color as if people with low melanin, me, are somehow colorless. I'm not transparent. I'm not. Right? So if you're willing to actually have a good faith discussion on the question, I'm up for it, and I am. I love these kind of discussions. But if you just want a finger wag and heart, which is what the other commenters besides yourself are doing, about how you think I'm a bad person, then I'm not interested, because I'm not interested. I used to do that a lot when I was younger, but I don't have time or patience for ignorant people who just want to spout off a whole bunch of bull crap, which in all fairness, I see that you're not doing here. As you can see, all of these ants marching on the page right here. So I'm going to just go through them line by line. Remember, what we're looking for is what? What we're looking for, let me scroll back up here to it. If you're willing to actually have a good faith discussion on the question that I'm up for, what is the question? The question is whether or not, how do you, me, reconcile supporting politicians whose rhetoric Javanka Brown perceives as demeaning towards her community while maintaining a friendship with me? So that's the standard. The rhetoric has to be demeaning to, or at least she has to perceive it as demeaning. And I don't know what her perception is or what her threshold is for her to say it's demeaning. So for mine and your conversation, let's say that the policies and such have to be demeaning toward her community. Now, I'm assuming because I haven't been around Javanka, haven't really spoken to her in nearly 40 years, 35, 36 years. So I'm assuming when she says my community, she means black people, or what she said up there before, people of color. Again, whatever that means, because I am also a people of color, right? So here's what you said. And again, a lot of respect for you for actually providing some information here and not just engaging in that emotional spurring and back and forth, you know, sort of, if you love me, you would know kind of thing. Well, asking that question means that you're I don't know, a schnozzy or something. I don't know. It's what some of the other commenters were basically saying. So, even though you're still off base here, I still can have respect for you that you're actually coming at me with something. The Muslim ban travel restrictions, targeting nationals of multiple Muslim countries and later several African countries, upheld in Trump v. Hawaii, but criticized as rooted in religious animus. If it's rooted in religious animus, then that is not something that is done by the administration in order to disparage, disrespect, or demean people of color. That was aimed at practitioners of Islam, which come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. So that would not, just logically, objectively speaking, be anything intended to demean, disparage, or disrespect black and brown people, which is what I assume Javanka means by people of color. So that one doesn't apply. Trump was not saying, hey, let's ban brown people from coming into the country legally. And since most people think of Muslims as being Arabs and Middle Easterners and maybe even Southeast Asians or whatever, well then let's have a Muslim ban. And that way we could help keep the brown people from immigrating in. That wasn't what he did. He put a Muslim ban in place. From what he said, I can't read his mind and you can't either. But from what he said, he put a ban on Muslim immigration from Muslim countries even. So it wasn't even a Muslim ban. It was an immigration from Muslim countries. So you didn't even have to be necessarily a Muslim. If you came from a Muslim country, he wasn't letting you in. Why? Because it was a religious issue. And really, when you get down to it, it was a worldview issue. Had nothing to do with people of color. Nothing to do with it. So that one doesn't count. Family separation, zero tolerance at the border, which criminally prosecuted all unlawful entrants. Who? Prosecuted all unlawful entrant. Now, it's unlawful, some new word that millennials and Gen Z have come up with to mean black and brown people, non-white people of color. Is that the new word for people of color? Or does that mean that people who broke our laws to try to get into the country were treated in an adverse way, in a demeaning, disrespectful, disparaging way? So like the family separation, the zero tolerance that separated thousands of parents and children, were those, as you parenthetically notated here, largely Latino, largely meaning not exclusively. You see, when you get to demeaning, disparaging, or disrespecting laws based on race and ethnicity, you can look to examples like Jim Crow, where black people had to go to the back of the bus. And you had water fountains that said coloreds only and whites only. In Pascagoula, Mississippi, I don't know where you're from. Maybe you're from that area. I don't know, but Javanka is probably familiar with this. There was a drive-in, like a little drive-up burger joint there on Market Street called Ed's Drive-In. And they had a little window on the side. Like everybody could gather up front where they ordered all the food in throughout the front of the building. But if you went around to the side, there was a little bitty window you could go up to. And they would take your order and you would get your food much quicker. Back during Jim Crow, that was the colored window. That's what the black people had to go order at. Okay. That was the window for them. Okay. It was exclusively targeting black people who could not go to the front of Edge Drive-In. Before that, it was a Tasty Freeze. I mean, a Dairy Queen, rather. My mistake. Of the Dairy Queen. They couldn't go in the front in order in the front like the white people. They had to go around to that right-hand side back there where that little window was at in order at the colored window. They were exclusively excluded and made to use other resources like that, other access. So when we say here that family separation, zero tolerance at the border, criminally prosecuted all unlawful entrants, as they should, they broke the law and separated thousands of largely Latinos. It was not targeting Latinos to demean, disrespect, and what was the other one? Disparage Latinos. And it wasn't, even if it had been, it wasn't because they were Latino or because they were what you and Javanka refer to as people of color. It was because they were breaking the law to come into our country. See, no one said, let's separate these brown kids from these brown parents. See, so that was not put in place to target Latinos or what y'all call people of color. So again, that doesn't apply because President Trump did not do that for the purpose of harming or injuring or restricting or oppressing brown people. He did it to protect our borders, to discourage illegal immigration. And most of the illegal immigrants happen to be brown, but their brownness was not the reason that he did that. So that doesn't count. I mean, underneath that sort of a mindset, the reason that I support Trump doing that is because I support Trump protecting our borders. Because without a border, a country can't exist. So why would, to go to Javanka's question, how could I reconcile being her friend and supporting President Trump's policy? I don't understand how his policy of protecting the border would somehow or another mean that there'd be a problem with me thinking of her as a friend. You see how that works? Public charge rule defining benefit use to deny green cards, visas, flagged by researchers and advocates for chilling access to health care and disproportionately harming immigrant families of color. This was a budgetary issue. This had to do with budgeting out national resources in regard to health care and health care access, which meant the American taxpayer was footing the bill for what you call immigrants, but they were almost exclusively illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever we want to call them. They were people who should not have been here. So again, that wasn't racially motivated either. It was motivated based on the fact that they broke into the country. They should not have been here. In breaking into the country, they should not have had access to the taxpayer dollars for health care. I mean, if that's the case, then I'm going to need you to mount an argument explaining to me why I'm obligated as a U.S. taxpayer to pay the medical bills of someone who sneaks into the country. That would be like someone breaking into my house tonight. I get up in the morning and there's some dude asleep on my couch I don't know, and suddenly it's up to me to feed them and clothe them and house them and get them medical care. Ray Charles can see that that's crazy. So your argument seems to be that since the vast majority, maybe all of them, were not of European descent, they weren't white folks, they had highly, or like very, very low levels of melanin in their skin, that somehow or another, because they were what y'all call people of color, that somehow or another we were morally obligated to pay their medical bills. Again, Stevie Wonder can see that don't make sense. I mean, are you saying that if it was a Polish person, a Norwegian person, a British person, a German person, that them losing their medical coverage at the pocketbooks of the American taxpayer, somehow that wasn't a violation. But since the majority, possibly all of the immigrants that lost their health care coverage, since they happen to be brown, somehow or another, the high levels of their melanin in their skin entitled them to my tax dollars and the tax dollars of every other American? Is that really your argument? I mean, because if it is, then my question to you would be to ask you how many medical bills you've reached in your own pocketbook and pulled your own money out of your own pocketbook and paid for people you didn't know before you paid their medical bills. Because I can tell you, I've done that for many people in my 54 years. Medical bills, housing costs, clothing, burials, food. Lady, I saw a post on Facebook years ago of some lady over in Pascagoula. She happened to be black, but that's irrelevant. But some lady on Facebook asking for somebody to help her buy clothes for a uniform so she could start a new job the next morning. I left up out in my office, my home office, told my wife, and one of my daughters was still here, and I said, hey, there's this lady, blah, 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 seems like a legit thing. How about we drive over to Walmart, meet her at Walmart, buy her a few sets of uniforms so she can start work in the morning. Of course, my wife, I've been married to her since 1991 for a reason. She said, well, hell yeah. So we got dressed. I messaged the lady. She met us at Walmart. We bought her several outfits out of our own damn pockets. We didn't look around at the tax base and say, hey, y'all, we need to pass laws and policies, y'all, so that we can rob all the taxpayers of their hard-earned money and then spend that money to buy clothes for this lady so she can start her job. No, ma'am. I reached in my pocket, pulled my money out, and that's just one example. Okay? So, I mean, I'm interested to know how many medical bills and utility bills and housing bills and so forth like that you've paid for people you don't even know, voluntarily out of your own bank account and not through your tax dollars. So this whole idea that somehow or another, if someone sneaks in the country and happens to be brown, that I'm obligated to buy their medicine and pay their medical bills, that's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But aside from that little diatribe I went off on, it's still reducing that expenditure was not trying to keep brown people sick or black people needing health care of any kind. It was simply enforcing the law and protecting the American taxpayer, which also includes black and brown folks, lady. I don't know if you realize this. So you people over on the left crying about stuff like this, y'all seem to think that there aren't black and brown people of all shades and colors over here on the right that are sick and tired of their tax dollars being squandered on illegal immigrants. It's like y'all think that protecting the borders and protecting the American taxpayers, a national treasury, is a white thing or something. It ain't. And if you like, I can tag folks in Javanka's a post here of friends of mine who are black. They're Indians. I know, Native American. The Indians I know, they call themselves Indians. So, hey, that's kind of like people of color. There's no such thing as a Native American. The natives who were here before the Europeans showed up, before this hunk of dirt was called America, they weren't Native Americans. I mean, for one thing, that makes it sound like they were one big group of people. They weren't. They were different tribes and they warred with each other fairly regularly. Almost all of them did. But they weren't native to America. America comes from Amerigo Vespucci, which is an Italian. So these continents are named after an Italian. So how are the Indians here native to some piece of dirt named after an Italian? You see how stupid that sounds? They're not Native Americans. But if you get down to it, they're Cherokee, Iroquois, Sioux, Apache, Navajo. Like I said, Miranda and her Navajo family called themselves Indians. And it wasn't because Columbus thought he was in India. He wrote of the people that he met there in the Caribbean, Central America and stuff. He said that they were people, they were very godly people of God, meaning En, Dios, got the Spanish/Latin word for God being, Deos. So in Deos, Indios, the Indians. This whole idea that he named them Indians because he thought he was in India shows people who say that do not know very much history about India, because the country of India in 1492 didn't exist, did not exist. People over in what we call India today didn't call themselves Indians in the 15th century. See how dumb that is when people try to tell that story? Oh, well, he called them Indians because he thought he was in India. Yeah, Indians, India, Indians, Indians. No, it was the Italian, actually, that he wrote, because he was Italian. He referred to them as people in Dios, people of God or in God. Deos, in Deos. You see how that works? Girl, I might be a redneck, but I'm an educated redneck. Anyway. Attempt to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census blocked by the Supreme Court. Experts warned it would undercount Latino and immigrant communities. There we are with that immigrant. I think what you're really being there is illegal immigrant communities. But again, that you didn't say what question it was there, so I don't have any way of responding to what question that is. Of course, I could Google it, but then that's me making your argument. So you didn't, maybe you can comment and tell me what question it was that was being added. But considering your points thus far, I really don't expect for it to be an attempt to demean, disrespect, or disparage people of color, however you define people of color. Rollback of fair housing enforcement rule with preserving community and neighborhood offers, which civil rights groups say that doesn't mean anything. Civil rights saying doesn't mean anything. Do you know who organizes and funds and promotes civil rights groups, as you call them? It's not by and large black people. Okay? How did Jesse Jackson become a black civil rights leader? Did black people get together and elect him? No. What about Al Sharpton? How did Al Sharpton become a black civil rights leader? Did black people get together and organize and elect him to speak for them? No. He was appointed. Who was he appointed by? The media and the white liberals, probably like yourself. Not by black people. They just pop up in the news. And the news says black civil rights leader Al Sharpton. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of black people to go, I don't know who Al Sharpton is, but I guess he's our leader. I mean, he's saying some stuff I agree with. So, but it's not like they chose him. So when you put this thing over here, which civil rights groups say, that doesn't mean anything. Civil rights people say, but that doesn't mean it's true. See, what you need to do is mount a logical argument showing that what they're saying is true. Otherwise, you're committing a fallacy called an appeal to authority. Also an appeal to the consensus, because in a way you're saying everybody agrees with this, or all smart people agree that this is the case, when in fact you have not proven that it is the case. Which civil rights groups say weakened anti-segregation obligations. What obligations were those? And pander to racist fears about integrating suburbs. Similar rollbacks resumed in 2025. Now, that problem right there with the AFFH and so forth, that had nothing to do with trying to segregate communities. How the hell is that going to happen anyway? Especially with as many of these mixed race families we have going on nowadays. I mean, I have cousins. I mean, race mixing has never been a problem for me. And Javanka can tell you that, like I said, we went to high school together. Okay? Race mixing's never been a problem for me. But I have cousins who were staunchly against it until their daughters got pregnant by a black dude. I got one cousin that said, and he was really country. He said, dang, when so-and-so, his daughter, got pregnant by that N-word, I said, wasn't no way I could love no N-word grandbaby. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I got the sweetest little old N-word grandbaby a man could have. Now, he hadn't got there yet, but he's closer than he was. And this dude was pretty racist. See, and I could probably name off a dozen fellas just in my little world that have been in that same position and have made that same adjustment. So, with that being said, how the hell would we turn around and resegregate our communities? You see that fear mongering that those civil rights leaders, that white liberals and the media have spoon fed the communities? How absurd that is, that fear mongering that they do is? I mean, come on, lady. You got to be smarter than that. If you could come up with this list of claims, you don't really have an argument assembled, but this list of claims, you have to be smart enough to really look beyond it to be able to see that this was not about somehow another anti-segregation. Lady, look, most any area you go to today, even with anti-segregation guidance in place, I'm going to tell you, I'm a realtor, been a realtor for about 7 or 8 years, okay? So I am extremely familiar. I am far more familiar than the average Joe with fair housing regulations, okay? However, most every area you go into, you're going to see where there will be areas where black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, Indians from India, I'm talking about the subcontinent of India when I say Indians here, and so forth, where they choose to live around one another. That's human nature. So many people self-segregate anyway. So the integration that there is today in housing is very little of it's because of the federal government's anti-segregation standards. That's just the bottom line. Now, there are some areas where that might be the case, but it's the minority. It's not widespread through the culture. There's an area in Mobile, a very high-end area in Mobile, and you never see properties come up on the public market in that area. Why? Because if you list it in the MLS or you use the services of a realtor like myself, well, then that all comes underneath fair housing. But if it's a private property transfer, then you don't have to. I mean, you can sell your house to who you want to. So those areas, those very elite areas, they exchange those properties between themselves in private transactions and end up avoiding fair housing. But that is the extreme minority, statistically insignificant numbers of real estate transactions. The vast majority, statistically, you might say all of them, come underneath existing housing and urban development fair housing laws. This rollback of fair housing enforcement that you claim here had very little to do with trying to disrespect, demean, or disparage or whatever people of color, as you and Javanka call them, and had a lot more to do with returning the governance and the administration and the regulation of local housing to the local people, the local city councils and such, many of which have people of color, as you and Javanka call them, sitting on those city councils, sitting on those housing boards, sitting on those real estate commissions, sitting in the legislature, and so on and so forth. That's what that was about, was just returning sovereignty back to the local level, similar to how the overturning of Roe v. Wade, people said, oh, it's denying reproductive health care rights to the woman, it's denying abortion access. No, it wasn't. Only thing that the Supreme Court did when they overturned Roe v. Wade was returned the administration and the legal regulation of abortion to the local states. And that's what what you call a rollback was about returning regulation of housing. Some of it, not all of it. Trust me, like I said, I have to take fair housing continuing education courses every 2 years. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to real estate, fair housing laws. They haven't been rolled back. Executive Order 13950 banning federal trainings that address systematic racism, sexism, divisive concepts. Civil rights group sued, calling it, again, civil rights can call it what they want. It don't make it true. If you want to show where this makes it true, I need you to mount an argument showing that, and not just saying, well, them people over there said it was racist, so it was racist. That don't mean nothing. It means absolutely nothing as far as logic and reason is concerned. Civil rights groups sued, calling it censorship that targets anti-racism work. It became a template for wider anti-DEI measures. What EO 13950 did was it established a merit-based system of hiring and promotion and advancement on the federal jobs level. All it said was that your race can't be taken into consideration. Your merit is what's taken into consideration. Okay, so that again is not geared, it's not targeted towards what you and Javanka would call people of color. If there's a black man, say like Ben Carson, the neurosurgeon who performed the first surgery that separated conjoined twins joined at the skull, the brain, if they're the top of their field, so to speak, or they're the most qualified person, of course they would be hired. Why wouldn't they? Actually, your support and possibly Javanka's support, but definitely your support, because I see that you're a little saltine, Ritz, Melba Toast cracker like myself. Your fight to defend DEI and against EO 13950, the only reason that you would think that that would be necessary, it would seem, would be that if you foundationally already thought that what you call, and Javanka probably calls, people of color, that they were somehow or another not as smart or not as hardworking or not as qualified as other races of people that may not be people of color. Why would you think that a black man or a black woman or Hispanic or Middle Eastern or African or Southeast Asian, well, we can't even really talk about the Asians because they're kicking all of our asses in society as far as the stats go. But I mean, why would you think that what you think of as people of color would really need EO 13950 to get a job that they were qualified in the federal government? Why would you think that they wouldn't be able to get that education and training and sharpen their skills and actually have the merit to get the job? Why would you think that they would need that extra help unless you had racist ideas about them? I'm not sure about that. DOJ curbs on non-police reform consent decrees, a Sessions memo, I guess would be Jeff Sessions, making it harder to address unconstitutional policing with disproportionately harms black and brown communities. I have no idea what you're talking about there. Maybe give me some more details there. But I would wager that your more details are going to come up underneath what every evidence you've tried to offer here thus far goes. See, what you're naming are policies that this administration has put in place, either for this term or the last one, the one before Biden. And you're saying, well, here's the policy he put in place, but it could possibly have a negative effect on people of color, whatever that means. It could have a negative effect on them, or even if not, civil rights groups say, as if that means anything, that is targeted towards them, so therefore it's targeted towards them. What you haven't done, though, is shown actual evidence of how it injured them actually, or how the Trump administration put these policies in place for the purpose of injuring what you and Javanka probably call black and brown people. You haven't done that. So you haven't succeeded at really evidencing here that the Trump administration is putting policies and practices in place that are geared towards injuring minorities. You're just saying there are practices and policies he's put in place that might injure minorities, or that civil rights organizations, as if I care, say will injure minorities. That's not the same. It's not the same thing. I mean, I'm reading what you're saying here, and I'm explaining to you what these policies were put in place for, and your claims that they were put in place in order to demean, disrespect, and disparage black and brown people, that's coming out of your fantasy land in your head. That's what I think, and I'm explaining why. And of course, you're free to explain to me how no, Trump did it on purpose, and this is the evidence that he intentionally did it just to hurt, harm, disrespect, disparage, or demean what you and Javanka would call people of color. You're free to give me your evidence showing that, but you haven't done that thus far. Ending, curtailing humanitarian protection disproportionately affecting black and brown migrants. At least you're being a little bit more specific with the black and brown there instead of the people of color like you and Javanka used before, because like I said, this is red. I need to turn my air conditioner on or something because I'm getting a little bit too red, up in here anyway. My studio is it has insulation, batting insulation in the walls for like more soundproofing because I share a wall with my kitchen and my dining room. That seemed like a really good idea until I got here and started using it, and I figured out that there is a climactic difference in here versus out there. At any rate, so ending, curtailing humanitarian protection disproportionately affecting black and brown immigrants. What you're talking about there is referred to in the human rights world or the civil rights world, and I only know this because I'm a realtor, and like I said, I have to take these fair housing classes every other year and everything. That's called a disparate impact. Now, what does disparate impact mean? Disparate impact is when a policy is put in place, or when someone, say for instance in housing, a landlord or something, puts some policy in place about his rental home. And that policy has nothing to do with racial, anything against the protected classes, race, creed, color, religion, national origin, familial status, handicap, that sort of stuff. Has nothing to do with it. Has a completely legitimate reason for this policy being in place. But the policy ends up inadvertently negatively affecting some protected class. And that's not always race, okay? That's what you're talking about there. Ending or curtailing humanitarian protections disproportionately affecting black and brown migrants, e.g., see, I'm an educated redneck. I am a redneck, but I'm educated. Ergo, terminating Haiti's TPS despite extreme danger. Now, just for anybody listening who is not familiar with TPS, that's the temporary protected status. What does temporary protected status mean? It means that they are in the country being protected, so they have a status of protection from the U.S. government, meaning they can stay. What's that T mean? Temporary. Temporary protected status. So, they ended or they cut way back, they curtailed the humanitarian protections disproportionately affecting black and brown migrants. E.g., they terminated Haiti's temporary protected status despite extreme danger. When the Haitians came in this country under protected status, it was temporary to begin with. So your claim seems to be that since Haitians, by and large, are going to be black, that they're making their status temporary by ending it, which is what TPS is by definition, by default. TPS is temporary, thus temporary protected status. So when President Trump said, hey, these protected status for these Haitians are temporary, so we're going to, it's temporary, so we're going to end it. We're going to terminate their TPS. And you know what? It's going to suck for them to go back to Haiti, but we got to cut back on all of these expenditures for immigrants, illegal and TPS immigrants here. When they came here, they knew they weren't here to stay forever. Time's up. They need to go back home to Haiti. Is it your argument that since they happen to be black, being Haitians, since they happen to be black, that they should somehow or another be treated differently than other immigrants who aren't black? Are you actually saying that black people should be treated differently than white people? Is that what you're saying? Because that seems to be the mindset of a lot of white liberals like yourself, is that you think that black people and brown people, what you and Javanka call people of color, that people of color should be treated differently than white people. Isn't that what the slave owners and the segregationists and the Dixiecrats and those sorts of people thought during Jim Crow and after? That blacks should be treated differently than whites? Because it seems like here in your little next to the last item here, that you're saying that since they were black, that their protected status should not have been temporary. And ending their protected status, as to all temporary things have to end, that's what makes them temporary, ending their temporary protected status and sending them back to Haiti somehow or another means that Trump was trying to disrespect, demean, and disparage people of color, black and brown people. So, I mean, it would be reasonable to say that you think that they should have been allowed to stay longer because they're black. But then that would mean that you think they deserve special treatment or different treatment based on race. And isn't that the actual, definition of what a racist is? Is someone who treats people differently depending on their race? I mean, that's pretty much what racism is. So it would sound like you're actually arguing for the Trump administration to be more racist towards black people. You just want them to be racist in a way that you think is kind of benevolent. So you want to prescribe the type and the method and the operation of the racism. But you still seem to be wanting to practice racism here. Whereas a fellow like me will say it doesn't matter if you're black, white, red, yellow, green, orange, purple, we're all under the same law. And so the Haitians' protected status was temporary. And as such, it came to an end. And they had to go home. Asylum restrictions, e.g., third country transit ban, MPP remain in Mexico, sweeping limits in 2025. Criticized as unlawful and racist. Criticized by whom? I would assume you mean criticized by the civil rights organizations which live on the left and are funded, organized, and administrated and often founded by white liberals, Democrats. See, so criticized as doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. As unlawful, but was it proven unlawful in the courts? If not, then it wasn't unlawful. You can't just make up laws based on your own political persuasion and proclivities and principles. It was either lawful or it wasn't. Criticized as unlawful doesn't mean. I'm supporting it as lawful. Does that mean it's lawful? If my support of it doesn't mean that it's lawful, then the criticism of it being unlawful doesn't mean it's unlawful, okay? So let's stay in reality, madam. Criticized as unlawful and racist, irrational, and effect on Central American and other non-white asylum seekers. That, again, was like one of your earlier ones. I think it was your first one, but I'm not sure. One of your early ones about immigration. That was not against black and brown people. That was just making the brown people from Central and South America abide by the same laws and regulations as people from Asia, people from India, Africans from actual Africa, people from Europe, people from the Middle East. They can't just walk in. They have to go through a port of entry. Okay? And that's what that was about. There were so many throngs of illegal. You want to talk about criticized as unlawful? No. Walking across the border doesn't have to be criticized as. It is literally illegal. So these throngs of people, instead of letting them just walk across our border and get on the taxpayer dole and disappear into the country and so on and so forth, instead of that, this policy said, remain in Mexico, register. We're going to check you out. We're going to vet you. Some of you will let in, some of you won't be let in. I'm not sure, and maybe you can help me understand this, ma'am. What was your name? Let me get you back. Shannon Gerald Ivy. You see, that's my middle name, too. I spell it with one N in the middle, but that's my middle name. Maybe we related, huh? Anyway, so Shannon, I need you to explain to me how protecting your borders against just an open door for millions of people to walk across, how that ends up being some sort of a racist move against black and brown people, or as you and Javanka refer to them, people of color, whatever the damn hell shit that means. See, I mean, it seems like you're saying that if they're brown and they want to come in the country, you have to let them in regardless of the consequences. You cannot have a national border that restricts the entry of non-white people. And if you do, then that means that you're a racist and you're a bigot and you're against black and brown and so on and so forth, which is absurd. It's absurd. So that's my response to all of your little things. So, well, your last one out here says, shall. I love it when women use words like shall in an argument because they think it makes them feel very educated and pompous and powerful. Shall I keep going, or do you want to continue to defend this piece of shit? I'm not defending. I'm assuming when you use that stupid rhetoric there, a piece of shit. I'm not assuming Donald Trump. Again, I didn't vote for Donald Trump the first two times. My vote for him in 2024 for this term was a very well reasoned and logical vote. So I don't vote by emotion. I don't vote along party lines. I vote based on my principles. So I'm not here right now to defend this piece of shit or any of that female, spurging, poetic, emotional drama talk. Oh, shall I go on, or are you defending this piece of shit? I don't care if you think he's a piece of shit or anything like that. I don't care. You can think I'm a piece of shit if you want. I don't care about that because I'm not here to defend this piece of shit. I'm here to defend the truth. See, and I don't care who the truth connects me with or who it separates me from, but the truth is the truth. And that's what I'm here to defend, is to stand against the lies, and in this case, the lies of the left, and I'll concede the right lies some too. And you know what I do when they lie? I call them out too. If you don't believe me, you can go to my Facebook or you can go to my YouTube channel. Look up Big Daddy on YouTube, and you'll see a lot of videos there, especially since Charlie Kirk got assassinated, where I'm calling out people that are on my side of the aisle. Why is that? Because I don't make my decisions and take my stands based on what everybody says or based on whether or not I'm going to be on the right side of history or whether or not I feel like one of the cool kids or this piece of shit stuff you're talking about out here. No. I take my stands as a grown American redneck man based on my principles of what is right and wrong, true and false. So I'm not defending a piece of shit. I'm defending the truth. It's just in this particular question that Javanka asked over here, that she asked in her first comment, her first post here about her genuine question, how can you reconcile supporting politicians whose rhetoric I perceive as demeaning toward my community while maintaining a friendship with me? The truth is what I'm defending, and not any particular person, whether it be Donald Trump or you, but I'm Dane.